I could feel my body freezing, my breath turning into mist in the darkness. My hands were trembling, my skin stiff, and every second felt like knives of ice cutting into me. The cold wrapped around my bones, and I could not tell whether I was shivering from fear or from the frozen air suffocating me. My lips turned dry, my heartbeat weak. My mind screamed for me to fight, but my body was growing heavier by the second. I pushed against the heavy lid above me, but it didn't move. It was sealed shut. My daughter, my own daughter, the one I gave life to, had locked me inside. Linda! I screamed, my voice cracking, but my cries bounced back at me from the metal walls. There was no answer, no sound of mercy, only silence and the buzzing hum of the freezer motor. The betrayal burned worse than the cold. I had raised her alone after her father's death. I had worked my bones to give her everything she asked for. Yet here I was, discarded like rotten food, left to freeze so she could steal what little I had worked for all my life. Tears rolled down my face and froze on my cheeks. My heart pounded against my chest, weak but wild, as my thoughts tumbled into panic. Was this really how my story would end? Not from sickness, not from old age, not even from some accident, but from the wicked hands of my only child? My mind went back to the night her father, Robert, died. He was a good man, a strong man. If only he were here, none of this would have happened. He would never have let Linda become so greedy, so heartless. My breath came in short, sharp bursts, my chest heavy, when suddenly, I heard it. A sound. The garage door creaked open. My frozen ears perked up, my heart stumbling. Footsteps. Slow, steady, coming closer. My body stiffened. Was it Linda returning to make sure I was gone? Or was it someone who had come to save me? The footsteps grew louder. My entire being trembled as I held my breath in the icy tomb. But my story didn't start in that freezer. No, it began long before that moment of betrayal. My name is Evelyn Carter. I am 78 years old, and I live in Atlanta, Georgia. My life was never easy. I was born into poverty. My parents worked themselves to the bone, and still we barely had food on the table. I wore hand-me-down clothes, walked to school with worn-out shoes, and sometimes went to bed with only water in my stomach. But I promised myself as a little girl that I would fight for a better life. And I did. I worked long hours, sometimes 2 jobs at once, and studied at night when everyone else was sleeping. I saved every dollar, every cent. And when I was in my 40s, I finally achieved something I thought was impossible. I bought my own house. A little brick home in the city of Atlanta. Nothing too fancy, but to me it was heaven. It smelled of victory. Every corner of that house held a piece of my struggle, my sweat, my tears. But God was kind enough to bless me with more than just a house. He blessed me with a husband, Robert. A tall, gentle man with the softest eyes. He became my rock, my joy. Together, we raised our daughter, Linda. Linda. She was my pride. When she was little, she was full of life. She would sing in the church choir, play with dolls, and run into my arms after school with her small hands holding up her homework, shouting, "Mommy, look what I got." I loved her more than anything. I worked so hard to give her a good life. I sent her to good schools, bought her nice clothes, and made sure she never lacked anything. I thought, with all my heart, that she would grow up grateful, kind, and caring. But life doesn't always go as planned. Robert died suddenly when Linda was 35. A heart attack, they said. One moment, he was laughing with me at the dinner table, and the next he was gone. The shock nearly broke me. I thought I would not survive it. But I held on because I still had Linda. She became my reason to live. At first she was supportive. She came often, helped me at the bakery I ran, and called me every day. But soon, her visits became filled with questions. Not about my health, not about my feelings, but about the house and my savings. "Mom," she said one evening, "why are you still holding on to this house? You're alone. You don't need it. Just give it to me, and I'll take care of you." I smiled weakly and said, "Linda, this house is mine. I worked for it. When I'm gone, it will be yours. But until then, let me live in peace." Her smile faded. I saw something dark in her eyes, something that frightened me. That was the beginning. Slowly, she became greedy. She asked for money all the time, big amounts, and never paid them back. She spoke carelessly, saying things like, "Why don't you just sign everything over to me now?" She grew angry when I refused. Sometimes she would slam doors, sometimes she would yell. And then one day she said words that cut me deeper than any knife. "You should just die already, Mom. You're wasting space."
I froze, staring at her.
My heart shattered. How could my child, my only child, say such a thing to me? That night I lay awake crying, asking God why my daughter's heart had turned to stone. Still I held hope. Mothers always hope. I prayed that she would change, but instead she grew worse. Then suddenly she became sweet again. She brought me food, smiled, laughed, even hugged me. For a moment, I believed her heart had softened. But little did I know she was planning her evil. One afternoon, she came to me with excitement in her voice. "Mom, come see the new freezer I bought for you. It'll help you store extra food for the bakery." Her smile was wide, but her eyes were too sharp. I should have listened to my instincts, but I trusted her. She was my daughter. I followed her into the garage. The freezer stood there, huge and white, its lid open. I bent down to look inside, and in a flash, she shoved me in. Before I could react, the lid slammed shut, and a heavy lock clicked into place. "Linda, what are you doing?" I screamed, pounding on the walls. But all I heard was the sound of her footsteps walking away. The betrayal burned in my chest. My own daughter wanted me dead. Also, she could take my house, my bakery, my life's work. My body grew colder by the second, my breath coming out in clouds. I thought of all the sacrifices I made, the nights I went hungry just to save for her education, the days I worked until my back ached so she could have a better life. And this was how she repaid me? Darkness began to creep into my vision. My eyelids grew heavy. Was this it? Was this the end of Evelyn Carter? Then, the garage door creaked open. Footsteps echoed against the concrete floor. Steady, slow, coming closer to the freezer. My heart thudded against my chest, fear and hope colliding inside me. Was it Linda coming back to make sure I was gone? Or was it someone else, someone who might just save me? The footsteps stopped right in front of the freezer. The air turned still. And then, the footsteps stopped right in front of the freezer. My body froze even more, but this time it wasn't from the cold. It was from fear. My heart pounded so loud I thought it might burst out of my chest. My breath came out in short clouds of mist as I whispered a prayer under my lips. "Please, Lord, let it be help. Please don't let it be her again." The silence stretched. Whoever it was stood still, right above me. I could hear my own blood rushing in my ears. Then suddenly, a loud knock hit the freezer lid. "Hello, Mrs. Carter? Are you in there?" A man's voice shouted. My heart jumped. It wasn't Linda. It was a stranger. My frozen fingers clawed at the walls as I shouted with the last strength in my chest. Yes, I'm here. Help me." The man cursed under his breath. "Hold on, ma'am, I'm gonna get you out of there." I heard keys jangling, then a tug on the lock, but it didn't budge. He tried again. My chest rose and fell fast as my hope began to flicker. What if he couldn't open it? What if he left me? "Stay strong, ma'am," he yelled. "I'm calling the police." My tears fell, hot against my freezing cheeks. Someone had found me. Someone knew I was alive. But then, like a nightmare slipping back into reality, I heard another set of footsteps. Quicker, sharper. The door to the garage slammed open. It was Linda. Her voice came like a whip. "What are you doing in here?" The man stammered. I heard something. A voice. "Your mother is locked inside this freezer." For a moment, silence filled the garage. I could imagine Linda's face, twisted with shock and rage. My heart pounded harder. Would she pretend, act innocent? Or would she show her true colors right here? She laughed. A dry, sharp laugh that cut through the air. "You must be mistaken. There's no one in there." "No," I screamed from inside, pounding with weak fists. "I'm here. Help me. Please don't listen to her." The man gasped. "Dear God, there is someone inside." He pulled harder at the lock. Linda's voice turned cold, deadly. "Step away. This is my house. That's just old junk in there." But the man didn't step away. His voice shook, but it carried strength. I'm not leaving until I get this open. Someone's life is at risk. My heart leapt at his words, but my fear grew too. Linda was dangerous. She wanted me dead. What if she hurt him too? Linda! I cried out, my voice breaking. Stop this madness. I'm your mother. But she didn't answer me. Instead, I heard a shuffle, then the sound of metal scraping. My blood ran cold. She had picked up something, maybe a tool, maybe worse. Get out of my house, she hissed at the man. Now. The man's voice was firm. Not until your mother is safe. For a moment, everything went silent. Then, a loud bang. Crash. The sound of a struggle filled the garage. Heavy breathing, feet scraping against the floor. A cry of pain. My heart thudded. What was happening out there? I banged against the lid, screaming. Please. Stop. Don't hurt him. Don't hurt him. But my voice was too weak, swallowed by the freezer walls. The sounds outside grew wilder. Then suddenly silence. Complete silence. My body trembled. Was the man still alive? Had Linda won? My breath came out in short, terrified bursts as I pressed my ear to the icy wall, trying to hear any sign of life. Then slow, dragging footsteps moved toward the freezer. Closer. Closer. Until they stopped right above me. A key scraped against the lock. My chest tightened. My whole body shook. The lock clicked. But the question that burned through my frozen veins was this. Was it the stranger who had freed me? Or was it Linda, ready to finish? The lock clicked. For a moment I couldn't breathe. My whole body froze, not just from the cold but from terror. I pressed myself against the icy wall of the freezer, waiting, praying. The lid creaked open and light spilled into the darkness, blinding my eyes. I blinked, my vision foggy from the cold. A face leaned over me. It wasn't Linda. It was the stranger. His eyes were wide with shock and pity as he looked at me. Oh my God, he whispered. Ma'am, are you all right? Can you move? Relief burst through me like fire in winter. I gasped for air, my body shaking, my teeth clattering. Thank you, I whispered, my lips barely moving. He reached in and grabbed my arms, pulling me out. My body felt like a block of ice, stiff and weak, but I clung to him with what little strength I had. The cold air of the garage felt warmer than the freezer itself. But before I could take another breath, a scream cut through the room. It was Linda. She stood a few feet away, her face twisted with rage, her hands gripping a heavy wrench. Her eyes locked onto me with fire I had never seen before. You ruined everything, she screamed. You weren't supposed to get out. The man stepped in front of me, shielding me with his body. Stay back, he shouted. The police are on their way. But Linda didn't stop. She raised the wrench high above her head and charged. I screamed. The man caught her wrist just in time, the wrench clattering to the floor. The sound echoed in the garage like a gunshot. They struggled, pushing and pulling, their breaths heavy, their shoes scraping on the concrete. My body trembled as I leaned against the freezer, too weak to help, too terrified to move. Stop, Linda. I cried, my voice breaking. Please. You're my daughter. But her face showed no mercy, only hate. The man managed to shove her back, but she stumbled only for a second before lunging again. Her nails scratched at his face, her fists pounding against his chest. He grunted, trying to hold her back, but she was wild, like an animal. I could barely stand, but I forced myself to crawl toward them. My knees ached, my frozen hands dragging me across the cold floor. Linda, please stop this before it's too late. For a brief moment, she glanced at me. Her eyes, oh those eyes, were not the eyes of the little girl I once held in my arms. They were sharp, full of greed and fury. Everything you had should have been mine, she spat. The house, the bakery, the money. You should have given it all to me. But you're selfish, Mother. Selfish. Her words sliced through me. I wanted to shout that I had given her everything, that I had sacrificed my whole life for her. But my voice caught in my throat. The stranger finally managed to push her away again. She stumbled against the garage wall, breathing hard, her chest rising and falling like waves in a storm. In the distance, faint sirens wailed. Louder. Closer. Linda's eyes widened with panic. She looked from me to the stranger, then back at the freezer. For a second, I thought she would surrender. But instead she ran. She bolted out of the garage door, disappearing into the night. The man rushed to me, helping me to my feet. "We need to get you warm, ma'am. The police will be here any second." My body leaned against him, weak and trembling, but my mind was spinning. My daughter had tried to kill me. My daughter had nearly taken another man's life. And now she was running into the night like a hunted animal. The sirens grew louder until red and blue lights flashed across the windows. Police cars screeched to a halt outside. Officers rushing into the garage. The stranger explained everything, his words tumbling fast. "She locked her in the freezer. She attacked me. She just ran out that way." The officers' faces hardened. Two of them sprinted after Linda, while another wrapped a blanket around me, guiding me gently toward the living room. I sat down, the warmth of the blanket barely reaching my frozen bones. My mind was a storm. Memories of Linda as a baby, as a little girl, came flooding back. Her laughter, her hugs, her tiny voice saying, "I love you, Mommy." Where had that child gone? How had she turned into this monster? Tears poured down my face as I whispered, "Why, Linda? Why?" The officer knelt beside me. "You're safe now, ma'am. We'll make sure she's caught." But was I really safe? My heart said no. Because no matter where she was, Linda was still my daughter. And she wasn't finished yet. The night dragged on. The police searched the neighborhood, but Linda was gone. The stranger, his name was Daniel, sat beside me, refusing to leave. "I couldn't walk away," he said softly. "Not after what I saw." I nodded weakly, grateful beyond words. But deep in my heart, fear still gnawed at me. Linda was out there. She was desperate. She was angry. And desperate, angry people are dangerous. As the hours passed, the house grew quiet. Daniel stepped outside to talk with the police, leaving me alone in the living room. I tried to close my eyes, tried to rest, but my body wouldn't let me. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow looked like her. Then, just as I began to drift into a restless sleep, I heard it. A soft creak. The back door. My eyes shot open, my heart slamming against my ribs. Slowly, carefully, I turned my head. And there, standing in the doorway, was Linda. Her hair wild, her face pale, her eyes glowing with fury. In her hand she held something sharp. A knife. She looked straight at me and whispered, her voice low and deadly, "If I can't have everything, then you can't live to keep it either." Her shadow stretched across the living room floor. The knife glinted in her hand, catching the weak light from the lamp. My heart almost stopped beating. My breath caught in my throat as I stared at the child I once rocked to sleep, now standing over me like a stranger. "Linda." My voice was barely a whisper, shaking like the old leaves in a storm. "Please put that down. Don't do this." Her lips curled into a bitter smile. "You just won't give up, will you? You survived the freezer. You turned the police against me. But this time you won't stop me. Everything should be mine, Mother. Everything." I shook my head, tears filling my eyes. "Linda, you already have my heart. You always had it. Why do you want to take my life too?" She stepped closer, her hand tightening around the knife handle. "Because love isn't enough. I want what you built. I want the house. I want the money. And I want it now. You don't need it anymore." I tried to stand, but my frozen legs betrayed me. My body was too weak, my knees trembling as though they would snap. I could only clutch the blanket around me and pray for strength. "Linda," I said again, my voice breaking, "you're my daughter. My only child. I gave you everything I could. You don't understand what you're about to do. If you cross this line, there is no going back." Her eyes flickered for a moment. I saw something, maybe doubt, maybe pain, but it was gone as quickly as it came. Her face hardened again. "Then let me cross it," she said coldly. She raised the knife. My scream caught in my throat, but before she could strike, the front door burst open. "Mrs. Carter." Daniel's voice roared as he charged inside, two police officers behind him. Linda spun around, her eyes wide. For a split second, she froze, the knife still raised. Then she bolted, rushing toward the back door. The officers shouted, their footsteps pounding as they ran after her. The house filled with chaos. The sound of men shouting, the slam of doors, the crash of something breaking outside. Daniel rushed to my side, grabbing my trembling hands. "Are you all right? Did she hurt you?" I shook my head weakly, though tears still poured down my cheeks. She was going to kill me. He knelt beside me, his hand firm and steady on my shoulder. You're safe now. You hear me? You're safe. But my heart told me otherwise. The minutes crawled like hours as the police combed through the backyard, flashlights slicing through the dark. They came back empty-handed. Linda had escaped again. I sat in the living room, my blanket tight around me, listening to the muffled voices outside. My body shivered, not just from the cold that still lingered in my bones, but from the truth pressing heavy on my chest. My daughter was out there. My daughter wanted me dead. Daniel stayed by my side the whole night. He brought me tea, though my hands shook too much to hold the cup steady. He spoke gently, trying to comfort me, but my mind was far away. I kept remembering Linda as a little girl, her small hand in mine, her laughter filling the house. The nights she curled up beside me during thunderstorms, whispering, "Don't leave me, Mommy." And now she was the storm. Why, Linda? I whispered into the quiet room. Why did you let greed eat your heart? Daniel heard me, but he didn't answer. What answer could there be? The next morning, the police advised me to stay somewhere safe. She's dangerous, ma'am, one officer said. Until we find her, you shouldn't be alone. But where could I go? This house was my whole life. Every wall, every corner, every photograph carried my blood and tears. Leaving it felt like leaving myself behind. I'll stay with you, Daniel offered firmly. At least until she's caught. I looked at him, this stranger who had become my protector overnight, and nodded. Thank you. The days that followed were tense. Every creak of the house made me jump. Every sound outside made me hold my breath. I barely slept, my mind haunted by the image of Linda's eyes, those cold, furious eyes. But there were quiet moments too. Daniel told me about his life, how he worked as a delivery driver, how he had only stopped at my house by chance that night. I guess fate wanted me here, he said with a faint smile. For the first time in days, I almost smiled too. Still, deep inside, I knew it wasn't over. 3 nights later, my fear proved right. It was past midnight. Daniel had dozed off in the armchair while I sat awake, knitting absent-mindedly just to calm my nerves. The house was silent, the kind of silence that makes your skin prickle. Then I heard it. A faint tapping at the window. Top, top, top. I froze, my knitting needles slipping from my hands. Slowly, I turned my head toward the sound. At the living room window, pressed against the glass, was a face. Linda's face. Her eyes locked onto mine, wide and wild, her mouth twisted into a grin that sent chills down my spine. And in her hand, glinting in the moonlight, was a can of gasoline. She mouthed the words slowly, clearly, so I could read them through the glass. If I can't have it, I will burn it all. The next morning, I woke up with my heart racing. My sleep had been broken into pieces, and every little sound made me think of Diana's cold eyes staring down at me. I sat on my bed, staring at the sunlight creeping through the curtains. Normally, sunlight gave me comfort, but not today. Today, it felt like a clock ticking, warning me that time was running out. My daughter had tried to kill me once. That was the truth, no matter how much I wanted to soften it. She had put me in that freezer, and left me there like I was just an old piece of meat, ready to be thrown away. The fact that she had failed didn't mean she wouldn't try again. I walked slowly into the kitchen and boiled some water for tea. My hands shook as I held the cup. Memories of the freezer rushed back. My skin turning numb, my teeth chattering, the smell of cold plastic around me. I had escaped, yes, but Diana still had the same greedy heart. That meant I wasn't safe. As I sipped the tea, I thought about calling the police again. But what would I tell them? My daughter wants me dead because she wants my house. They would laugh and say, "Ma'am, do you have proof?" Proof. That was the one thing I didn't have. All I had were my scars, my memories, and the pain. But proof? None. That was when an idea struck me. If Diana wanted to play dirty, then I would play smart. I decided that I would start keeping evidence. Every word, every threat, every attempt. This time I would not be caught off guard. Later that day, I went to the store and bought a small recording device. I tucked it inside my blouse pocket and practiced pressing the button without anyone noticing. I also bought a small notebook to write down everything that happened. If she tries again, I whispered to myself, this time the world will hear the truth. By evening, I was sitting on the porch when Diana drove up. She stepped out of her shiny car with her usual fake smile. "Hi, Mom," she said sweetly, like she hadn't almost killed me days ago. I forced a smile too. "Hello, Diana." Inside, she pretended to fuss over me. She brought a cake, saying she had bought it just for me. My stomach turned. I didn't touch it. Instead, I kept watching her hands, her eyes, the way she studied me like a hawk studies its prey. "Mom, you look tired," she said softly, touching my arm. "You should rest more. You know, sometimes too much stress isn't good for old people." There it was. Another hidden dagger inside her words. I smiled weakly. "Don't worry about me, dear. I'm stronger than I look." As soon as she left that evening, I opened my notebook and wrote down every detail. My hands shook, but I kept going. This time I wouldn't let her lies bury me. Days passed and I tried to live quietly, but inside me a storm was building. Every time I heard her car pull up, my chest tightened. I didn't know what trick she would try next. Then one night it happened. I had gone to bed early. Around midnight I heard noises in the kitchen. At first I thought maybe it was a raccoon or the wind. But then I heard footsteps, slow, careful footsteps. My blood ran cold. I stayed still, listening. The floor creaked closer and closer to my room. I reached under my pillow for the little flashlight I kept there. With trembling hands I clicked it on. The door creaked open. And there she was, Diana. But this time she wasn't holding flowers or cake. She was holding a pillow. Her face was twisted, her teeth clenched. Her eyes filled with a darkness that sent shivers through me. She stepped closer, whispering, "It will be quick, Mom. You won't even feel it." I froze. My whole body turned cold. My heart screamed inside my chest. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. She raised the pillow higher, her shadow falling over me. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I was not just an old woman waiting to die. I was Eleanor Brooks, 78 years old, and I had fought too hard in life to end like this. "Stop, Diana," I screamed, my voice breaking the silence of the night. But she didn't stop. She lunged forward. I grabbed the flashlight and swung it with all my strength. The metal hit her wrist, and the pillow fell from her hand. She stumbled, shocked. My heart pounded. "You think I'm weak?" I shouted, my voice shaking but strong. "You think you can kill me like an animal?"
No, Diana.
"You will not win." She glared at me, her chest rising and falling like a wild animal ready to strike again. But just as she moved toward me, the front door suddenly burst open. "Mom! Mom!" It was my neighbor, Mr. Jenkins. He had heard the screaming from his porch and rushed in. Diana froze, her face pale, her eyes wide. She looked caught, like a thief with her hand in the cookie jar. "Is everything all right?" Mr. Jenkins asked, panting, his flashlight scanning the room. I stared at Diana, and she stared back at me. For the first time, she looked nervous. Her hands shook, and she forced a laugh. "We were just playing around," she stammered. But I knew the truth. And now, I had a witness. I sat back on my bed, my whole body trembling. Mr. Jenkins stayed by the door watching. Diana picked up her purse quickly and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I pressed my chest, breathing hard. That was the second time she had tried to take my life. And this time, the world had almost seen it. But I knew it wasn't over. No, not at all. Because the look in Diana's eyes before she left told me something chilling. She wasn't done yet. And I also knew something else. Next time, she wouldn't come with just a pillow. She would come with something far worse. The days that followed my daughter's arrest were heavy. I thought peace would return to my life, but instead, my heart carried a weight too strong for my weak bones. At 78, all I wanted was calm, but my world had been filled with storms. I remember sitting by the window in my small living room in Ohio, rocking slowly in my chair. The cold from the freezer still haunted my body, even though I had been pulled out alive. Sometimes at night, I would wake up gasping, my skin damp with sweat, thinking I was back in that icy box. I would whisper to myself, "Evelyn, you're safe now, you're safe," but my chest still tightened every time. The neighbors were kind. They often came around with food, flowers, or small notes of encouragement. But deep inside I felt broken. My daughter. The same girl I raised with my 2 hands, the one I carried on my back when she was a child, had left me to die like I was nothing. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. One morning I received a letter from the court. My hands trembled as I opened it. The trial date was set. My daughter would face the law for what she had done. Reading those words filled me with mixed emotions. Part of me wanted her to face punishment. Part of me still wanted to protect her, because no matter how evil her action was, she was my child. That night, as I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling, I thought of her face when she was little. She had a smile that could light up the darkest room. I remembered her soft voice calling, "Mama, don't leave me." Whenever I went to work, tears slipped down my cheeks. Where had that sweet girl gone? What turned her into a woman so hungry for wealth that she could lock her mother in a freezer? The trial day came and the courtroom was filled. People whispered as I walked in slowly with my cane. I could feel their eyes on me, pitying me. My daughter, Clara, stood in front of the judge in handcuffs. Her face looked pale, her eyes swollen, and yet she still lifted her chin like she was proud. When the prosecutor spoke, the room grew silent. He described how Clara had planned everything carefully, how she locked me in, hoping the cold would finish me off so she could take my property. My heart bled listening to every word. It felt like knives were piercing my chest. Clara didn't even turn to look at me. When it was time for me to speak, the judge asked if I wanted to say anything. I stood slowly, gripping my cane with shaky hands. The whole courtroom stared at me. My voice broke as I began. "I am Evelyn," I said. 78 years old. I am the woman who was locked in that freezer. I should be dead today. But by God's mercy, I am alive. This woman here is my daughter. I carried her for 9 months. I fed her with my own hands. I denied myself clothes just to clothe her. I gave her my life. And yet, my lips trembled. She wanted me gone because of money. What money can ever replace a mother? The courtroom was quiet. Some people wiped their tears. I saw Clara's lips pressed tight, her eyes blinking fast as if she wanted to cry but refused to. I sighed deeply. "Judge, I want justice. But I also want my daughter to find her way back to the right path. Let her pay for what she did, but let her also learn that greed destroys." The judge nodded slowly, and the trial continued. Days later, Clara was sentenced to several years in prison. The news spread everywhere, and people in the community shook their heads in disbelief. Many came to tell me, "Evelyn, you are strong. You survived what many could not." But each word only reminded me of the wound that wouldn't heal. At first I thought I would feel relief, but instead I felt emptier. I returned to my house, sitting in the same chair by the window. The house was quiet, too quiet. Every tick of the clock echoed like a hammer in my ears. Sometimes I wished Clara had just left instead of trying to kill me. At least I wouldn't have this scar in my soul. But life had more tests for me. One night, around midnight, I heard noises outside my house. At first, I thought maybe it was just the wind. But then I heard footsteps, slow, careful footsteps. My heart pounded hard. I grabbed my cane and shuffled to the window. Through the dim light of the street lamp, I saw 2 figures moving around my backyard. They looked like men, tall and broad. My breath caught in my throat. "What now?" I whispered. I quickly turned off my lamp and stayed quiet, hoping they would leave. But then I heard the back door handle rattle. Someone was trying to break in. My legs felt weak, but I forced myself to stay calm. Slowly, I reached for the small phone I kept on the table. My hands shook as I dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency?" A calm voice answered. "Please," I whispered, my voice trembling. "This is Evelyn Parker, 78 years old, from Ohio. Someone is trying to break into my house. Please hurry." The operator told me to stay on the line. My whole body shivered as I crouched behind the sofa, clutching the phone like it was my last lifeline. I could hear the men talking outside, their voices low. "Is she home?" one asked. "Doesn't matter. We get what we came for," the other replied. My heart nearly stopped. What could they possibly want from me? Then suddenly I heard a loud crash. The back door gave way, and the men entered my kitchen. My mouth went dry. I prayed silently. "God, protect me." I stayed as quiet as I could, but the sound of their boots grew closer. My old body trembled uncontrollably. I could hear them moving through the kitchen, then the hallway. And just as one of them stepped into my living room, the sound of police sirens filled the night. The men cursed under their breath. "Cops! Let's go!" I peeked from behind the sofa and saw them run out through the broken back door. Moments later, the police rushed into my house with flashlights and guns. "Ma'am, are you okay?" one officer asked as he helped me up. I nodded weakly, tears flooding my eyes. They tried to come in. They wanted something. I don't know what. The police checked my house and secured the doors. They told me they would investigate. But as they left, I couldn't help but feel something worse was coming. Because the way those men moved, the way they spoke, it felt planned. Like someone had sent them. And deep in my gut, I feared it wasn't over. What if this wasn't just a random break-in? What if it was connected to Clara? Could she, even from prison, still be plotting against me? The thought sent chills down my spine. I tried to sleep that night, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw those shadows in my house. I heard their footsteps. And my mind whispered a question I couldn't silence. What if next time I'm not so lucky? The day after my daughter's arrest, the house felt strangely quiet. For years my heart had carried the noise of her betrayal, the sound of the freezer door slamming shut, the echo of her footsteps walking away while I froze. Now that silence wrapped around me like a blanket, and for the first time in a long while, I could hear myself breathe without fear. But quiet does not always mean peace. It can mean the storm is only hiding for a little while. I woke up at dawn with the sunlight crawling through the blinds. My bones ached, not from age alone but from the heaviness of carrying betrayal. I stood by the window holding my cup of tea, staring at the street where children rode their bikes without worry. I thought to myself, they do not know how quickly a heart can break when the person you love most tries to bury you alive. My daughter Angela was locked in the county jail awaiting trial. But jail did not erase the fact that she was my blood, my own child. I felt my heart fighting between anger and sorrow. How could the little girl I once rocked to sleep, the girl who used to bring me flowers from the yard, grow into the woman who tried to take my life for property? People came to the house that day. Neighbors, church members, and even strangers who had read about it in the news. They looked at me with pity in their eyes, as though I was both a victim and a ghost. They said things like, "You're so strong, Martha," or, "God saved you for a reason." Their words were kind, but kindness sometimes deepens the wound. Because while they saw survival, I still saw the freezer, and I still heard the voice of my daughter whispering, "Stay quiet, Mama, it'll be over soon." But the highs of life often find a way to interrupt the lows. That afternoon my lawyer, Mr. Collins, visited me. He was a tall man with gray hair and a calm voice. He brought documents, big envelopes filled with papers that seemed too heavy for me to carry alone. He said, "Martha, your daughter tried to transfer your house into her name while you were missing. But since she's been arrested, the law will undo everything. Your home is safe, your bank account is safe, and all your property remains under your name." The relief that washed over me was like rain after a long drought. My house, the one I had lived in for 45 years in Dallas, Texas, was still mine. No one could take it from me. But at the same time, tears rolled down my face, not from joy but from grief. Because the one who tried to steal it was not a stranger, not a thief from the street, but my own child. For a few days things were calm. I started cooking again, walking around my yard, even tending to the roses I had neglected for months. It felt almost normal. But life, I had learned, never walks a straight road. The crooked turns always come. One evening, as I sat in the living room knitting, I heard a knock on the door. It was not the gentle knock of a neighbor. It was hard, angry, demanding. My heart jumped. Slowly, I opened the door, and there stood a woman I had never seen before. She looked about 40, her hair tied back, her eyes wild with anger. "You're Martha, aren't you?" she asked, her voice sharp like a knife. "Yes," I said carefully. "Who are you?" She stepped closer, her jaw tight. "I'm Angela's friend. She told me everything. And I came here because she doesn't deserve what you're doing to her." I froze. "What I'm doing to her? She tried to kill me." The woman's voice rose. "No. You're just making her look bad. She told me you always favored other people, That you never gave her enough. She deserves this house. She deserves your money. You're selfish, Martha. My knees trembled. This stranger was defending the daughter, who locked me in a freezer. It felt unreal, like I had stepped into a nightmare. I think you should leave, I whispered, but my voice cracked. She pointed her finger at me. Angela will get out. And when she does, she'll come back stronger. You better watch your back. Then she turned and stormed off into the night, leaving me shaking at the doorframe. That night I could not sleep. Her words repeated in my head. You better watch your back. I kept seeing Angela's face, not behind bars but standing right outside my house again. The freezer door kept slamming in my mind over and over. The next morning I called Mr. Collins and told him about the woman. He sighed deeply and said, Martha, Angela might have manipulated some people outside. I'll inform the police, but you must stay careful. Keep your doors locked at all times. So I locked everything. Every door, every window. I checked them 3 times before bed. But locking doors does not lock out fear. It sneaks in through the cracks of your mind. Days passed, and though I tried to keep calm, strange things began happening. I found muddy footprints near my back porch, though I had not walked outside. One morning my garbage can was tipped over. Its contents scattered. Another time I heard footsteps outside at midnight, but when I peered through the window no one was there. I began to wonder if it was paranoia, or if Angela's friend was stalking me. Still I tried to carry on. I returned to church, and the congregation prayed for me. I even smiled a little during hymns, letting the music lift me. But peace is a fragile thing. It can shatter in an instant. One Saturday night as I prepared for bed, I heard a loud crash from the kitchen. My heart pounded as I grabbed the nearest thing for defense, a wooden cane I kept near my chair. Slowly I walked toward the kitchen. My hand shook so badly that the cane thumped against the floor. When I reached the doorway I froze. The back door was wide open, the lock broken. My pots and pans lay scattered across the floor. A window curtain flapped in the wind. And then I heard it, the sound of footsteps running away into the night. Someone had broken into my house. I dropped the cane and clutched my chest, gasping for air. My safe place, my home of 45 years, had been invaded. The thought slammed into me like a wave. What if they had found me asleep? What if they had dragged me away? What if it was Angela's friend? I called the police, my voice trembling. When they arrived, they searched the house but found no one. Looks like they left in a hurry, one officer said. But ma'am, it's clear someone is targeting you. My body shook from head to toe as I sat at the kitchen table staring at the broken door. The freezer flashed in my mind again. Darkness, cold, betrayal. Only this time I knew something worse. The nightmare wasn't over. Someone was still out there watching me. And as the officers left, I realized something chilling. If Angela's friend had the courage to break into my house once, she could come back. The sound of the gavel striking the wood echoed through the courtroom like thunder. Order in the court, the judge commanded. I sat there, my old frail body wrapped in a simple gray coat, my white hair neatly tied in a bun. My heart was pounding as though it wanted to break free from my chest. I was 82 years old, but that morning, I felt younger than I had in years because I knew justice was about to be served. Across from me sat my daughter, Emily. Her face was pale, her lips trembling. She wore the same arrogance she once wore when she thought she had buried me alive in that freezer, but it was fading fast. Her once proud eyes darted nervously around the courtroom as her lawyer whispered to her. But no words could hide the truth anymore. The truth was laid bare. I thought back to the night she locked me in that freezer, the cold biting my skin, the darkness wrapping me in silence, and the betrayal of her hands. The very hands I once kissed when she was a baby. My heart broke then, but it rebuilt itself with stone walls, walls I had never known I possessed. The prosecutor's voice rang out. Your Honor, the evidence proves without doubt that Emily Richards deliberately attempted to murder her own mother by locking her in a freezer, all in a selfish attempt to seize her property. What she failed to realize is that not only did her crime fail, but it also cost her everything. I held my cane tight. Tears filled my eyes, but not of sadness, of relief. The judge turned to Emily. Do you have anything to say before I pass judgment? Emily stood. Her voice cracked. Mother, please. I didn't mean to kill you. I was desperate. I thought if I took over the house, the money, maybe life would be easier. I was wrong. Please forgive me. Don't let them lock me away." Her words were knives, but I refused to bleed anymore. I slowly stood leaning on my cane. The courtroom went silent. All eyes were on me. "Your Honor," I said softly, my voice carrying through the room. "This woman is my daughter. I loved her more than life itself. I gave her everything, my time, my sacrifices, my love. Yet she tried to bury me in ice and silence. I almost forgave her once, but forgiveness does not mean freedom from consequences. She must face what she has done. If she walks free, then what lesson will the world learn?" Emily's tears flowed, but I did not move toward her. My heart was heavy but firm. The judge nodded slowly. "Very well. Emily Richards, I hereby sentence you to 25 years in state prison for attempted murder and fraud." The sound of the gavel struck again. Emily cried out, her knees hitting the floor, but it was too late. Justice had spoken. As the guards dragged her away, she turned her head one last time toward me. "Mother, please. I'm still your daughter," she screamed. I closed my eyes, whispering to myself. "And you were my child, but you lost yourself when greed took over your soul." The courtroom emptied. I sat alone for a moment, breathing deeply, my hands trembling from the storm of emotions that had just passed. Later that night, I walked into my house in Texas, the same house Emily once tried to steal from me. The walls felt warmer now, not because of the heater, but because peace had returned. My neighbors had gathered at the porch, clapping and cheering for me. They had followed my story from the day they helped break open that freezer and pull me out alive. "God bless you, Helen," one of them shouted. "You're stronger than steel." I smiled faintly, though tears slipped down my cheeks. Strong? No. I wasn't steel. I was a mother broken, rebuilt, and reshaped by fire. Inside, I placed my cane down and sat at my kitchen table. I stared at the family pictures that still hung on the walls. Emily as a child, her bright smile, her missing teeth, her little arms wrapped around me. For a moment, I almost wished I could turn back time and save her from becoming the monster she became. But life had no rewinds. It only had lessons. Days turned into weeks. People came to visit me, neighbors, church friends, even strangers who had heard my story. Some wept for me, some cheered for me. A reporter asked me, "Mrs. Helen, what lesson would you like people to learn from what happened to you?" I looked at him and said simply, "When greed enters the heart, love dies. And when love dies, everything is lost." My daughter lost everything, not because I took it away, but because she let her own darkness steal it. Families must learn to treasure love above possessions, because houses, land, money, these things can vanish. But the love of a mother, once broken, may never return. Months later, I visited Emily in prison. She looked thin, her face drained of pride. When she saw me, her eyes lit up with a flicker of hope. "Mother," she whispered. I sat down across from her. "Emily, I came not to hate you, but to remind you of who you used to be. You can spend these years angry or you can change. I will not take away your chance to repent, but I will not forget what you did." She lowered her head, tears dripping on the cold steel table. "I lost everything, didn't I?" "Yes," I replied, my voice steady. "But maybe in losing everything you might find yourself again." As I left the prison that day, I felt something shift in me. Not full forgiveness, but a release. A weight lifted. The scars would remain, yes, but scars are not just wounds, they are proof of survival. When I reached home, I sat on the porch, watching the Texas sunset paint the sky orange and gold. My heart whispered a prayer, not just for myself, but for Emily too. I prayed that somewhere in her brokenness, she would rise again. Because in the end, life is not about what you own. It is about what you carry in your soul. Emily chose greed, and it cost her everything. I chose survival, and I found peace. And that, dear listener, is the lesson I leave you with. Love is the treasure worth keeping. If you trade it for greed, you will end up with nothing but emptiness.